everyone, and welcome to the Deck Tech for Reanimator. For those of you who aren't familiar with the list, it's been written about a couple times by several different people, including Brad Nelson and myself. I would encourage you to go read up on it. If you're not familiar with it, it might help you get a little bit better understanding than these videos will, because these are going to be just brief sketches of what the deck is going to be able to do and the cards that are going to be different. An important thing to note is that this is a pre-rotation version of the deck. It is not going to be what it looks like once Return to Ravnica is actually out and live. Uh, there's really, I guess, three main differences in the deck. That's not counting the lands. And that is Inferno Titan, Faithless Looting, and the Tracker's Instincts. But the card that's replacing Tracker's Instincts is so functionally identical that in a sense better. I would say it's just not really worth getting into that much. Tracker's Instincts is a flashback, but that's an extra color. And Grisly Salvage, even though it's two different colors, which isn't much of a problem, its instant speed digs one card deeper and gives you two alternatives for the cards you pick. So I think Grisly Salvage as a card for that slot is a little better. But Faithless Looting, however, is a much more interesting topic to discuss its replacement, which was going to be Lotless Troll for the most part. Now, that's not a necessary replacement. Obviously, Faithless Looting doesn't rotate. You could play it. And in fact, the original list I made for the post-rotation version did include it, but I had to play Blood Crypt, and that made the mana much more difficult, given that Birds of Paradise wasn't actually reprinted like everyone was expecting. When you have cards like Arbor Elf, and it interacts with the current lands you have, you need to play green untapped duels, and since there isn't whatever the name of the red-green shock land is from Ravnica, I think it's Stomping Ground. Without that, I don't think you can really justify playing Faithless Looting. Even though I think Faithless Looting is a better card for the slot, which is to be able to discard your Craterhoof Behemoth or any other large creature you might happen to play in your deck. If you draw it, you need to make sure you can get it into your graveyard. That's the main function of Faithless Looting, and that's what Lotless Troll can allow you to do. The problem is Lotless Troll can't let you discard your Lingering Souls to flash them back cheaper and accelerate out the creatures faster, and it also doesn't dig into your library. And having Faithless Looting is just like extra copies of these, because being able to flash it back, it digs 4 cards deep. So you're just filtering through so much of your library, you're gonna find the pieces you need. So those are the differences. Obviously, they're going to be reprinting Stomping Grounds, so that'll just shape the deck up differently. But also, any other large creatures they may bring to the format could significantly change everything as well. Since we are currently operating with Craterhoof Behemoth, we are on the clock of speed. Like, we're trying to kill them as fast as possible, not set up card advantage or board advantage or anything along that line. We're trying to reduce their life total to 0, and we're trying to make them have the response. They're going to be on the back foot, and that's really your plan. If you're on the back foot, it's much more difficult, but Craterhoof Behemoth is so explosive that you can still come out of some crazy situations like that. There are other much different versions that still play a lot of the same cards. Like, they play less copies of the creatures they try to reanimate, and they play like Gerard's Order, and they kind of get whatever creature they happen to need in the circumstance. And I think that deck's probably fine. I haven't really tested it much myself or given it a lot of thought, but I have thought about playing Gerard's Order maybe in a list like this and playing 1 or 2 additional fatties in this slot. The problem is, though, the list is very tight. I don't think you can really change the mana base. I don't think you can change the main board spells a whole lot. So I don't know if I'll be playing it in this version. I think it would be a completely different deck, but it'd play a lot of the shell cards, which would be kind of your accelerators, your filtering, and probably just Lingering Souls because the card's obviously good. The cards that will be gone completely will be Inferno Titan. We won't be having access to a card like this anymore. I'm just throwing him in this pre-rotation list to kind of have some fun with him before he leaves in. Without Lotless Troll, I think I need some other threat than Thragtusk in order to present if I don't hit the Craterhoof. So that's currently why he's there. And he can also be a pseudo board wipe for a lot of decks, especially the green-based Naya Birthing Pod strategies. But once the rotation comes, the very first list I'm going to try out is replacing Faithless Looting with Lotless Troll, replacing Tracker's Instincts with Grisly Salvage, and I'm going to add a 4th copy since we have 1 less filter card, and it's only our discard outlet. And then I'm going to add the 4th Thragtusk, which is going to be this. So we're not going to have that alternative Fatty, our main plan is just to beat him with Crater Hoof Behemoth. But since Lot the Troll can get rather large if you needed to, like if late in the game you're top decking a bunch of birds, or not birds, I guess that'd be Arbor Elf, a bunch of Arbor Elves and Avacyn's Pilgrims, and you really just don't need him. You just pitch him to the Lot the Troll, he gets bigger, he's pretty easy to keep alive for the most part. I think really the only sweeper that can kill him is Terminus. So, I mean, if they're not playing white, which I think has all sweepers except for Mizium Mortars and Bonfire of the Damned, he's pretty hard to get rid of. So, that's an interesting note. He's going to probably give you a lot of free wins, I think, because he's cheap and he gets in there pretty quickly. Other than that, the deck's, like I said, functionally the same. I'm not trying to play it in order to see how it does against matchups, because the current matchups we're going to be playing against is the current standard, and it'll be completely different. So this is really just to see how the deck functions as a archetype. And even though the mana base will be quite different, I think in a sense it'll be better. I mean, there's going to be a couple circumstances where you have nothing but these, and turn 4 you really need an untapped land, but you draw one of those. And if you have shocklands, that probably won't really ever happen. So I guess it'll be better in that sense. Shocking yourself might not, but you usually win in a matter of one large turn. You just bring Crater Hoof back, and they either have the answer or they don't. And it's not the easiest thing to answer. I mean, even sometimes killing Crater Hoof is irrelevant. If you have enough Lingering Souls and Accelerators, they're still dead. I would say don't mind the sideboard at all. I mean, it's completely irrelevant. It's just jank I threw together in order to play matches. I just tried to find the best things I could. I have alternative large creatures to bring back. Fourth copy Thragtusk is probably always going to come in. Oh yeah, Avacyn would be included here. Just some answers in case I need them. Like, Duress will probably come in against a lot of slower decks and probably a lot of Delver matchups. You wouldn't think you'd need it, but Duress is actually completely screwed their hands over that it's rely on Delver. They keep a lot of 1-mana Delver hands. Celestial Purge against zombies, and everything else is just kind of to fit into any bad matchup I might have. And I don't really think that's a good way to go when making a sideboard, but this isn't really a deck. This is just a way to show you how to use the archetype for the most part. But I honestly think that game ones are going to be the majority of the insight you're going to get, because it's going to be how the deck functions more so post rotation and after sideboard. Even though a lot of these cards do survive rotation, this does not, but it has a functional reprint, and this does not. But all these other cards can stick around if I happen to want to use them, which is very unlikely. I think there's much better cards printed in the new set that we have available for a deck like this, but you can have a couple different alternative sideboard plans. You can do what Brad Nelson did with his Solar Frights list, and he would play 4 copies of Strangleroot Geist and 4 copies of Sword of War and Peace, and then he would board out like his reanimating package and then go aggressive, and they would bring in all this hate that would just be blanks. I'm not going to do that, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad strategy. I'm sure it can work in several circumstances. Since we don't have a card like Sword of War and Peace or any of the swords, I really don't know how well that kind of strategy would work without a card that can punish him as bad. So there's that note, and plus the decks you're playing against are just completely different. So we'd have to wait to see how defined the format is and how good the hate is against a narrow combo deck like this to see if it's worth having an alternative strategy in your sideboard. But be sure to check out the matches so you guys can see how the deck works, and thanks for watching.